Hello and welcome to Mission TV. We're here at the GC 2015 and we're talking to missionaries and learning about projects from around the world. Right now I have Gary Roberts with me. And Gary, where are you a missionary?
I'm working in Papua, Indonesia, which is the western half of the island of Papua New Guinea. Some people might know it as Dutch New Guinea or Irian Jaya, Indonesia.
Okay, so what are you doing there?
Several things. I'm a missionary, number one. Secondly, I'm a pilot. And so because of the terrain in that island, there's no roads or very few roads. And so the only way to reach places is to go by airplane.
Okay, so what kind of flights do you do? Do you take pastors to places and Bible workers and move stuff? And
we're doing several things. We haul a lot of supplies, construction materials, because many of the villages are looking for schools, clinics, churches. Some villages are improving their airstrips, so they're actually putting on asphalt. So we fly in tar for those larger villages. And of course, people. We're the only link from small villages to a hospital. So when there's patients to fly, we fly them. When there's pastors to fly, we fly them. When people need to get back and forth between those areas, we often fly them as well.
Okay, are you directly under the Adventist Church, or what organization are you with?
I'm working with the East Indonesia Union.
Okay.
And so the aviation program falls under the union, which is under the division, and of course the general conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have any stories from your work there? Anything that stands out that you'd like to share with us?
Well, you know, I'm very recently moved to Indonesia. I've been working in Africa and South America prior to that. I guess the stories that I would share would probably be older stories, because I actually spent 4 years in Indonesia during my high school days. And during that time, I had the privilege of also flying a little bit with my father, because I got my pilot's license after my 10th grade year of high school. So the last 2 years in Indonesia, I actually traveled around and did more flying than I've done since I moved to Indonesia this time. But I'd like to share one story of a village that we were accessing. We had a project to build 1,000 churches in unentered areas. And during that time, it was my job to be the first one into the village with a colleague of mine, and we'd go and see what the needs were and speak to the village people and ask them if we could bring a church plant there and so on. And so we had traveled by boat on this occasion because we were going down the coast of the island, and they told us that it was supposed to take about a 2-hour boat ride to get there. So we left early in the morning intending to go and come back the same day. Well, we started going, and of course the boat driver kept saying, well, it's only a few more minutes, only a few more minutes.
The next corner.
And this went on most of the day. So we actually didn't get to our destination till about 5 o'clock in the evening. And the waves were too large, so we couldn't actually go to shore. And so we had to find a small island that had a protected cove, and we could come in, but we couldn't even make it to shore with that, because we were in a small canoe that was about 2 feet wide maximum.
Wow.
And we were afraid the waves would tip it over. So we actually dropped a small anchor, and then we had to swim to shore. And we spent the night on that island, uninhabited island, a very small island. And so then the next morning, when the waves weren't so large, we were able to make it back to the mainland. And when we arrived there, the people said, how did you get here so early? Where did you spend the night? And we just pointed to the island that was off the coast, and they said, no, you can't spend the night there. That's a spirit-infested island. Nobody stays there. We said, well, we did. And they said, no, you didn't. We said, well, yes, we did. You can go out there and see the fire spot that we made, you know. And when they figured out that, yes, indeed, we had spent the night on that island, they were amazed, because they didn't know that people could live after
where
spending
the spirits had
where
been.
the spirits were. And so that kind of opened the door for us into that village. And they were able to then meet with us, and we were able to get permission to come in and put a church there. And it was a great witnessing opportunity, because, you know, when they said their spirits were there, I said, yes, but we have a bigger spirit, and he protected us.
Right.
And so I guess time and time again I've seen on this island there's a tremendous spiritual battle going on. The devil has a stronghold there. He's tried to keep people in darkness. Cannibalism has still gone on until very recent history. The traditions there are against God's plan. For example, if somebody dies in the family, the wife of the husband, if it's the husband's relative that dies, the wife has to cut off her fingers. So it's common to see ladies with several knuckles missing, or even
Wow.
all fingers missing, because she's cut them off. And so you see time and time again how the devil is just working to keep the people in spiritual darkness. And so it's a great opportunity to be there and to be able to have an impact and try to make a difference in those people's lives.
Wow. Well, that's a wonderful, wonderful story. You mentioned that you were working before in other countries.
Mhm.
Did you see similar kinds of spiritual darkness in those places, similar needs?
You know, the world in general is a needy place. With medical aviation, we target some of the most remote places in this world. So yes, it is very common in some ways with the remote areas that we work in with medical aviation to see the extreme needs and the extreme spiritual darkness. But definitely the island of New Guinea, where we're working now, and also in Africa, where we worked previously, very similar in the spiritual darkness that exists and the local traditions that the devil has caused people to think of as their culture that are against the Word of God.
Right. So many times we're afraid to go in and affect someone's culture.
Yeah, oftentimes we want to blame it on culture, we want to blame it on different things, but really we're looking for a heavenly culture.
Right.
And it's just that we're so historical, we like to look to the past and not look to the future. And that's a very difficult concept for some of these people because they're still living in what I call an oral culture. Things are passed down from generation to generation.
By
Whereas for
stories.
us, it's a written culture, so you're reading it, you're reading history. For them, it's immediate. It's something passed on from their ancestors, and that's why ancestor worship and all of those things are extremely difficult to deal with because you're basically telling somebody to go against what their parents have taught them.
Right. And it was ingrained
Exactly.
in them. It's part of their family. It's part of their everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really hard. So, do you see a need for more missionaries out there?
There's always a need for missionaries. The problem, I guess, that I see is that most people are not following the call of God because we tend to think of missionaries as people who are special or people who are different than us.
Yeah, or crazy.
Or crazy. There's some of those too.
Yeah.
But a missionary is a common everyday person. You cannot be a Christian and not be a missionary. God has given each one of us a call. And so I'm actually a little bit frustrated sometimes when I come back to North America and people say, wow, we have a missionary here, we have a real live missionary, or whatever the case is. But really, we're all called to do that work. And whether we're doing it in a remote part of the world or whether we're doing it next door, it's the same job. It's sharing Jesus with those who don't know.
The thing is that you're doing it. And
That's
that's
the
what we
difference.
don't see so many times in North America.
And we need to get revived. And, people ask me, well, isn't it challenging? Isn't it difficult? Well, yes, it is. But it's a tremendous blessing as well, to be able to take somebody who has not heard the gospel before, or maybe they've heard it and they didn't realize the impact.
It wasn't a clear picture or something.
Whatever the case is, it's a life-changing experience for them. And just imagine if you, let's say that you go to heaven and you arrive there, and just one person comes to you and says, I'm here because you told me. Wouldn't that make your day?
Oh, yeah. That'd
And
make
then-
about 1,000,000 years worth of days.
And then think of it in the opposite direction. Think of people who are lost because we didn't do our job. And that's what really drives me, is so many people out there do not have the opportunities that we have. If you know the gospel, if you've read the Bible, you're a Christian, you are so blessed, and you have so many opportunities. Share that with those who don't have it.
And it'll bring joy,
Absolutely.
even if it's
Absolutely.
hard sometimes.
Absolutely.
And you've had some hard times as missionaries.
We've had some very challenging experiences. We lost our son in Africa, a 4-year-old son. We just buried my father last year in Indonesia. And that's why I had to go to Indonesia, because we couldn't find anybody else to do that work. So right now, actually, I'm traveling between Africa and Indonesia to keep both projects going, because we don't have others who are taking over that work.
So you need help.
We need help in a magnificent way. We don't just need 1 or 2 people.
Right.
We need hundreds
Multiply.
of people
Right.
to get involved, because we can share the gospel in the whole world very quickly if everybody does it.
Right. If
But if
everybody's
there's
working.
very few people out there doing it, it'll take forever.
Right. Even with the Holy Spirit, the Lord needs hands and feet.
That's right.
That's
right.
what He's asked us to do, is be His hands and feet.
So often we like to think that it takes a special gift or a special training to be those hands and feet. But God is our trainer. We don't need to have special talents. God has equipped each one of us to serve Him.
Right. And if He takes you to a place where He's expecting you to do something you've never done before, isn't He able to teach you?
Absolutely.
Have
He's
you
able-
seen that yourself?
I have. I've done so many different things. I feel very privileged. But ultimately, I would say that people need to follow the calling that God has given them. So often we try to say that you have to be this or you have to be that.
So how would someone find out their call? You talk about a call, and everybody's called. How did God show you your call?
Really, I think it's following what you're good at. God has entrusted us with talents, with capabilities. And so often we think of, to be a missionary or to do certain things, you have to get certain training. You have to fit into a certain pigeonhole. But really, the talents that God has given us are the talents that He wants us to use to serve Him. So I grew up enjoying flying. My father, of course, was a pilot. My mother is a nurse. And I also loved animals. And so I wanted to be a veterinarian at first and then a zoologist, so I could fly over game parks and look at animals. But when I was about 10 years old, I was helping an eye doctor, ophthalmologist, do cataract surgeries. And so the people would come from miles around. They'd walk up for up to 10 days to come to our little clinic. And I was translating for the doctor and also assisting in surgery. And after surgery, we'd have to transport the patients, and they'd lie flat on their back for 7 days. And after 7 days, you would take and remove their bandages and give them a pair of glasses. And that would be the first time that they could see in maybe several
How many
years.
ever years?
And they would always turn to me because I was the voice that they were used to hearing. But then I'd point them to the doctor and say, no, this is the one who helped you. And I think spiritually has a strong implication, and that's really where I got my desire to be involved in the medical field and do something to help people. And so I studied nursing, and I also studied aviation and aircraft maintenance. And it's been such a tremendous blessing because you can go to remote parts of the world and help people. You can transport yourself there. And, some people say, well, that's cool and that's awesome, but I don't know how to do that. That's fine. Because guess what? I spend a lot of my time doing construction. I spend a lot of my time fixing things. I spend a lot of my time administrating. And God is calling each one of us to work as a team. And if we had a team, all of us could be doing the things that we enjoy doing, and everybody would be happy.
Okay, so that's quite a variety of work that you do as a pilot nurse.
It is, and there's many other things that we've been called to do at different times, but God will always give you the strength and the knowledge to do the things that He calls you to do.
Right. Well, I'm so glad you could take the time to join us today, Gary. I know there's a lot more stories that you could share and experiences. Maybe we have time for one more. One more.
All right. Maybe I'll share a short story for the kids out there that enjoy animals. Of course, I grew up with monkeys and different pets, but more recently I was able to transport a baby elephant in my airplane.
Wow.
And there was a massacre of elephants, and there was one baby that survived, and it wandered into a village And so the villagers tied it up to a tree, and then they called me and said, "Can you please help us?" So I went there, and we found this elephant that was supposed to be very small, but it ended up being about 9 months old.
Oh, okay.
And we transported it back to the small runway or trail that we had used, and we were able to load it into the airplane and take it back to our base. And there's a small video that was done about that. But this little elephant, it was amazing to see how human-like it was from a standpoint of caring for it. We care for malnourished babies a lot. This baby elephant needed us to be with it all the time because it was missing its mother. The milk that it needed was similar. The protocols were similar to a baby that we would do. And this baby elephant would cry. It had tears. They mourn and they miss their loved ones. But it really reminds me of how God has created each one of us. And I believe that in the Garden of Eden that there was communication between the animals and Adam and Eve. It was the spirit of prophecy tells us that there was that they communed in a different way than we do today. And this little elephant would follow us around as if we were its parents. And it just reminds me of how we need to follow God. He's the one who cares for us, and we need to follow God wherever He leads us. That's what this elephant would do. It'd just literally follow us everywhere we went. And so as you're seeking God's will, seek to follow God, and He will lead you to what He's called you to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gary, for coming and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
And I want to just appeal to those who are out there watching that they would do something today for God. Just do one thing each day, and God will lead you step by step. Thank you.
All right. So, Gary, is there a way people can get involved and learn more about what you're actually doing there? Is there a website people can go to where stories are, or how can they find out more about your specific work in Indonesia and Africa?
We're going to have a website very soon. It's not finished yet.
Okay.
It'll be flyaai.com, or they can email me at medicalaviation@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. So I want to encourage you, our viewers, to get involved, read the stories, choose to go, do something for God today. May God bless you until we see you again on the Mission TV show.